Good afternoon. Welcome to another live Q&A session. So this is actually the 20th session that we've done, so the 20th week in a row that we're doing the live Q&As. So I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who sent in questions so far. Really do enjoy doing these, and hopefully long does it continue. On that note, I've had 4 great questions that have come in this week. So this week we're going to be talking about how to safely bench press at home with a barbell. My thoughts on resistance bands, particularly when it comes to muscle strengthening. Noisy knees, what can we do about it and whether should we worry about it, and particularly during squats. And then whether we should be doing cardio on different days to weight training, and if we do it on the same day, should we do it before weight training or should we do it after weight training? So these are people that have sent the questions in the last week. If you have questions, I welcome any questions live as well. So if you would have anything around challenges when it comes to strength training as an older adult, whether that's starting, whether you've got started, you don't know how to progress, then please do use the chat feature or the comments to let me know what your questions are, and I will try and answer them in the session. And if not, I'll definitely do it in a following week. If you're watching the recording of this, then again, please do use the comments feature. If you're watching the recording as well, then if you're looking just for a particular question that I just mentioned above, you can look in the description and there'll be a timestamp of when the question has been answered, and you can kind of jump straight to that section if you want to do that. As always, there's only one thing I would really like to ask in return if you found any value in these videos, is if you could just click the thumbs up button underneath this video and make sure you click the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to Never Told to Lift. That really helps YouTube algorithm to send this out to more people, and hopefully we can help more people get started. So I've had a couple of questions from Maggie this week. So Maggie's one of our regulars, so if you're watching live, Maggie, just let me know in the comments and I'll get started with your question when I know you're here. But for the moment, I'll just start with one of the other questions I've had this week before I come on to that. So this one got emailed into me, and again, that's always a way of asking a question if you don't want to put it in a public forum like the YouTube or Facebook. So you can just send me an email. It's chris@nevertooldtolift.com. So it's chris@nevertooldtolift.com, and you can send me your questions there and I'll keep that anonymous. So this question was, should I do cardio before or after weights, or should I do cardio on a different day to weights? So my thoughts on this is, what I normally recommend is that people should do weights. Most people are looking, if they're just getting started, they don't want to feel like they're doing huge sessions in one go because it feels so daunting they're not going to show up. So actually just doing more shorter sort of 30-minute sessions is a lot more achievable than doing big hour sessions. So on that note, I would probably recommend to people, or I normally suggest that people do different sessions on different days, because if you're doing weights, you're generally going to need a recovery day before you go back in to push the same muscle groups again. So on that recovery day, all that recovery means is recovery from the weights and pushing to fatigue. So you could then do cardio the next day. So say Monday you did weights, Tuesday would be cardio, which could be anything from running to swimming to cycling to tennis or just a different sport, just something that's not weights again. Then on the Wednesday we could go back to the weights, and on the Thursday you could do the cardio. So that's probably my recommendation, but I realise that actually that's not for everyone, in terms of you're then having to look for more days per week where you have to commit to exercise. And actually some people like to just do 2 or 3 sessions where they just do everything at once, in which case I would, if you're going to do cardio on the same day of weights, that's absolutely fine. A lot of people do that. But I would say if strength is your main goal, for most people watching this, strength is going to be the goal, because as we get older, we know we're going to be losing strength. I would do your cardio after you've done your weights. So I'd really focus on pushing your muscles close to or to fatigue during the session, so that then you can do your cardio, and then you can just do your cardio at the pace you feel comfortable doing it based on how your muscles now feel after having done the weights, rather than pushing yourself too hard on the cardio and then already being fatigued going into your weights, because that could then cause a safety issue as well. If your goal is more the endurance side of things and you're not using as heavy weights and you're doing more repetitions, then you could do your cardio first and then go on to the weights. But generally, I recommend if you're going to do them on the same day, I would probably go for weights first, then cardio. Now, if you wanted to do 5-10 minutes on a bike as just a gentle warm up, just to get your heart rate up and get some blood to the muscles, then that's fine as doing a bit of cardio as a warm up, but you're not kind of pushing yourself too hard on the cardio as like a separate cardio session before doing the weights. So hopefully that answers the questions, and or if anyone here has any follow-up questions to that, then do let me know. Let's hide that one there. So Maggie has just let me know she is here and watching live, so we'll bring your questions up. So hi Maggie, hope you are well. I'll do the one you sent in me this morning first, and then I'll go back to next week's. Oh no, sorry, the other way around. Let's do the last week's one first. So Maggie says, just thought of a question. I have a home gym and would like advice on safety whilst lifting alone. Specifically bench pressing with a barbell. I'm thinking of buying a weight bench with a built-in squat stand, brackets no room for anything bigger, learning how to extricate myself should my muscles fail, brackets the roll of shame. This is a bad idea. So basically summary there, yeah, how to safely bench press in my home gym is kind of what I took from that. And I suppose it's good you're watching live, Maggie, because I suppose there's a couple of questions. It's when you say, is this a bad idea? Is it bench pressing at home, or is it bench pressing, pushing to fatigue, and is the roll of shame the thing that's a bad idea? So you could kind of give a little bit more information there. But for anyone watching, the roll of shame is generally considered where if you're doing the bench press and you get stuck with a bar in your chest, you kind of roll the bar down into your stomach, down to your hips until you can sit up, and then you can generally stand up and then move the bar away from you. I mean, that side of it is probably considered a bad idea to kind of feel like you're at high risk of going into that, because firstly, the bar suddenly coming down on you could cause an issue. And then if it's resting on you for too long and you're rolling it down and there's different pressure points in the ribs, it can bruise the ribs first and it's be uncomfortable, but it could potentially cause an injury to the ribs or to the abdomen. So if we can avoid the roll of shame, then yeah, that's generally ideal to avoid it first. But there's a few things we can think of in terms of safely bench pressing at home. So the first one is using a weight you know you can lift and you're not going to risk that, which is difficult because the whole point of trying to build strength is we want to try and push to fatigue to really get the muscle strength. So firstly, we don't necessarily need to push to fatigue, we can get close to fatigue. So as long as you've only got 1 or 2 repetitions left, then we don't necessarily need to take it to that very last repetition, because the closer we get to the very last repetition to fatigue, the higher the risk is that we're going to end up failing and end up with that bar resting on us. So yeah, it's just keeping yourself slightly short, knowing that it might not be as the most efficient workout, but we'll still be, as long as we're getting close enough to fatigue, we're still going to be getting some strength. And Maggie just says it's bench pressing at home and the safety aspect that concerns me. So yeah, hopefully all these points will help. The next one is, if I'm at home, I tend to use dumbbells rather than barbells, partly for the safety aspect, but partly because I like to challenge your arms slightly differently to each other, and it brings in a bit of stability as well. Is if you got a dumbbell in each hand rather than a bar in both, so the dumbbell in each, as you come back, you can kind of just drop one to the side and then drop the other to the side, and you're not kind of got anything physical that's going to sort of get trapped on you. Like I say, you do get a bit of stability in there, but so there are pros and cons anyway to using dumbbells over barbells, and they're both brilliant options. But personally, I tend to use the dumbbells for the safety aspect, that I know I'm not going to get stuck if I do reach fatigue. Another thing to think about is a grip on the barbell. It doesn't necessarily stop the getting trapped, but it can stop the drop onto you. Is if I can, sorry, it's mirrored here. There we go. Um, if the bar is there, ideally we should try and get the thumb kind of hooked round the bar, because there are some people that like to do bench press here, so their thumb is kind of the same side of the fingers, and if they're sweaty, it can cause a bar to slip, and that's where it could slip and then land on you. And if it's come from the full height of being locked out, that could cause an injury to the ribs. So I'd always try and make sure you are wrapping your thumb around the bar when you're doing a bar bench press. The one that I often suggest to people, if you are going to do it at home with a barbell and you are pushing to fatigue, is to not use clips. So as you get to the point, so the clips are the bit that hold the plates onto the side of the bar and make sure they don't fall off accidentally. In a bench press, it's less likely to happen accidentally anyway compared to, say, a squat. But actually, if you get trapped to the bottom, it does mean you can kind of roll to one side and roll to the other side, and sort of you then purposely trying to kind of get the plates to slide off towards the end until they drop off, and then it normally drops off one side and it shoots to the other side, and then that comes off, and then the bar is now light enough that you can then lift it off you, and you get back to safety that way. So again, that is another option. And then the last one, well, actually two more. The other one is you can make sure there's someone around. So even if they're not in the same room, if you're doing it, I don't know, in the garage, or you have a room that you do your workouts in and there's someone else in the house, it's just making sure all the doors are open. Warn them that I'm about to start doing bench press. Just keep an eye out. If I shout, I need your help. And having someone else in the house that can come and help you should you get trapped is a good idea. But again, I know it's not always possible. And then the last one is you can actually do it as a floor press rather than a chest press. So if the press is the same, so you're still going to come from chest position up, but rather than do it on a bench, you're laying directly on the floor. So it does mean you don't get the full depth of the movement. But particularly if you're using bumper plates, so the kind of wide diameter plates rather than the shorter diameter plates, as you come down, you kind of get to the point where the bar can just rest on the bumper plates, and there's normally enough of a gap underneath you that you can just roll the bar away from you and then get up unscathed from there. So yeah, a few things to think about there. So either consider dumbbells rather than the barbell. Making sure that rather than really trying to push to fatigue is just using a slightly lighter weight and keeping a little bit back so that you reduce the risk of getting trapped. Not using clips, making sure you wrap your thumb around the bar when you are doing it, making sure someone else is in the house if you can, and then potentially doing the floor press rather than the bench press. So yeah, just let me know if that is helpful or if that brings up any other questions that you wanted to clarify. And whilst you do that, I'll go on to your next one, which is this. You sent this one in this morning. So I'm a big fan of resistance bands. What's your take on them for strengthening muscles? So again, I also a big fan of resistance bands. A lot of people that come into the clinic to see me who don't necessarily have access to a gym, they're a great way of adding resistance in directions that weights just can't. So weight will always work in the direction of gravity. So it'll always work in that downwards direction, which then limits you for some movement patterns. So like the pull movement pattern where you're trying to pull something towards you, you can do a bent over row where you're then trying to pull the weights up towards your chest and back down again. But again, some people, if they struggle with back pain and they don't like that hip hinging type motion and sustaining it whilst you're doing stuff with weights, that can be quite uncomfortable for people. So it then doesn't leave a huge number of options for the pull movement pattern. Whereas a resistance band, you can anchor it, particularly because you can get these door anchors that are a kind of a stopper with a seatbelt type strap that creates a loop. So you can then trap it in the door. Most people think you do it over the top of the door, but you can actually, if you're quick, you can get it in the side of the door. So then you've got the whole length of the door, so you can get it to kind of chest height or waist height, depending on where you want it. And then rather than the direction pointed down in gravity where it is a weight, it could pull from the side. So now I can, if it's anchored over this way, I can now pull against resistance for a trunk rotation, or I could pull into with the resistance band and into sort of those seated rows, and it opens up a load more options of exercises. The only thing that some people do forget is that point when you say their take on them for strengthening muscles. When we're trying to strengthen muscles, we are trying to push our muscles close to the point of fatigue. As some people, the resistance bands aren't quite strong enough or have enough resistance, so it means they're not actually getting close to fatigue, and they do their 12 or 15 repetitions or whatever they're aiming for, and they could have done probably another 10 repetitions, which means they're not necessarily going to get stronger as a result. So you do want to make sure that you're using a resistance that is strong enough to get close to muscle fatigue there. I like the big kind of loop bands that you can get, but you can get other ones that are more like tubing and they've got handles on the side. You can get the ones that it's called TheraBand, that's kind of a wider, but it's kind of almost paper-like thickness. There's lots of different types out there. I think I've got it linked in the description below, but there's a recommended products page that I've got on the Never Toil to Lift website, and there's a few different options there you can have a look at. But yeah, resistance bands, really good bit of kit, and particularly for the pull movement pattern and the rotation movement pattern, they're well worth having in your home gym if you've got them there. So again, if that's helpful. So you said for the last question, that's very helpful. Thanks. I hadn't considered leaving off the clips. Great idea. Yeah. So the clips is one of the more common ones that I tend to suggest to people. Again, I've never had to use it, luckily, because again, I tend to hold a little bit back if I'm doing it from home. But it does help you get trapped underneath, because the last thing we want is for that to happen when you're on your own. And then let's say, hopefully that's helped with the resistance bands. And then one more question in a second. I meant to do a quote at the start, but I completely forgot. So I've got a quote I found this week that you might find, sorry, that's not the quote, you might find entertaining but interesting at the same time, is age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And that's Mark Twain. And I thought this brilliant, and again, really applicable to strength training, is that a lot of people will tell you that you shouldn't be doing things like strength training or things that are more strenuous as you get older. And actually, we know that's not the case. You can build strength at any age, and yes, it's going to be a bit more difficult as you get older. But yeah, if you don't mind, that people are going to have some doubts about it, and there's going to be some naysayers that they're not comfortable with the idea of it, and they're going to try and sort of hold you back. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Just carry on anyway. Know that you've researched it enough. You've created your plan, you're working on it, and you're taking things slowly and doing things in the right way. It doesn't matter what other people think. You know you're doing the right thing by trying to build strength, because if you're not doing it, you're just going to be getting weaker with age. And with that comes frailty and a whole load of other problems. So yeah, age is just an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Good. So before I go on to the last question, again, just a reminder, if you are watching this live, please do use this chance to ask any questions. I'd love to help you if you're struggling with anything. Use a chat feature if you're on YouTube, or use a comment if you're on Facebook. If you are looking for some help on getting started, then you might be interested in the Never Toil to Lift ebook. So this is completely free ebook that is going to help guide you through putting together your own program around your kind of individual needs and your starting point, and any restrictions or conditions that you might have that are stopping you from getting going. So if you want to download that, you can look in the description below, or if you go to nevertoiltolift.com/start-here, you'll find that there. As you can see, it's also available as a paperback on Amazon. So the easiest thing there, I think the link is in the description, but if you just go to Amazon and just search Never Toil to Lift, that's what the front cover looks like, and you should find that there straight away. But for now, the last question that I had this week was, do I need to worry about noisy knees when I squat? And generally, you'll probably hear the similar answers from other kind of physios and other rehab professionals. Is if it's not painful when you get the noise when you squat, then I'm generally not too worried about it. If it is becoming acutely painful when you're doing it, then whilst it's not the noise I'm worried about, I'm more worried about the pain that comes with it. And if you're trying to push through that pain and you're repeatedly making things worse, and then you're starting to flare the knees up, and then you're less likely to be able to do a squat, then we want to worry about that. But clicks and creaks and grinds, they can all mean slightly different things. But generally, if something's clicking, it could be something that's gone tight around a prominence. So where is it you should kind of find that tendons glide over prominences as they move? Sometimes if it's tight, you might get a kind of click one way forwards or backwards. And it's not that it's a bad thing or damaging thing. It's just sometimes it can get aggravated underneath, and that's something we might want to consider. But yeah, generally I'm not worried about that. Other times it can be lots of tight fibers rubbing over a few different prominences, so you get a kind of more grinding type sound. In our brain, we tend to think, oh, it must be bone on bone, but actually it's generally kind of tight bands of muscles rubbing over other tight bands of muscle, which causes that creak. Tendons tend to, when they're slightly inflamed, cause a slight creaking type sensation that if anyone's had like Achilles tendinopathy before, you might have felt like your Achilles tendon is creaking. Again, it's not ideal that it's inflamed, but it's not something that we necessarily need to worry about. It's more the pain levels that come with it we need to kind of be concerned about. So if you are getting noisy knees when you squat, you'll probably find that as you get stronger, that begins to settle. And some of you probably heard me talk about Phil, who is one of my sort of patients that has seen me for 4 or 5 years, and he's just turned 80, and he's able, having never lifted before, he's able to lift now about 60 kilograms from a squat, and he's 63 kilograms himself, and he's done 70 or 75 kilogram deadlift. When we first started doing the squat, even body weight squat, he had really creaky, noisy knees. And again, most people would think, I'm not going to do it because I'm worried that I'm doing something wrong. So they then avoid the squat and they just work on everything else. But actually, it's probably a sign that your quads particularly, but your muscles around your knees aren't as strong as they could be. And what we found by continuing and getting stronger is, whilst they're still a bit noisy at times, the range of motion that they're noisy in is far less, and the noise itself is far less, and it's happened a lot less frequently. And the only thing that's changed is he's added in the strength training. So whereas he thought it would be worse as a result of doing strength training and he would cause some irreversible damage, or he had all these kind of narratives in his mind about why he shouldn't do it, the noise actually improved significantly. And I can't say that's going to be the case for everybody. Sometimes the noise is there no matter how strong you get, but a lot of the time, if you're worried about noisy knees or just noisy joints in general, you tend to find as you get stronger, that will settle. But again, if it does become painful and it's getting worse, don't push through blindly. That's where you might want to go and see a physio or sports therapist or rehab professional and just get that assessed and looked at. And we can look at ways of adapting the squat. So sometimes it is as simple as, don't go as deep into the squat, just do a shallower squat, but you can load the shallower part heavy and you should still start reaching muscle fatigue. And then once the muscles get a bit stronger, you can often find that you can reduce the weight back down, and then you can start to work deeper in the squat to kind of build more strength in it and build tolerance to lower ranges of motion. And then eventually, like I say, you should find that not only the knee pain settles, but the noise associated with that knee pain might settle as well. So hopefully I think that covers there. Again, that was the last of the 4 questions that I came pre-prepared with. If you are watching this live, this is your last chance to ask any questions live. If you're watching this in recording, then please do still leave a comment. I will answer that in a following week's question. I welcome as many questions as possible because it helps keep these sessions going. Like I say, this is number 20 now, and I plan to keep this going definitely to the end of the year and beyond. I still do plan on doing this next week at the normal time of 12 o'clock. It is Easter holidays. If there's any issues with childcare, it might be that I have to do it in the evening, but I'll make sure I email out. But if you come on at 12 and I'm not here, it's likely that it's going to be in the evening, and just check the emails from there. But hopefully I will see you all then. Whilst I'm waiting to see if there's any questions coming in, I'll just do a couple of other reminders. So I already mentioned the ebook there, so it's nevertoldtolive.com /start-here, and that link's in the description. If you want some of the Never Told to Live clothing, then you can find that at nevertoldtolive.store. Again, link is below. There's water bottles, t-shirts, hoodies, vests, mugs, all sorts there that you might be interested in. And also, if you want some of the stuff in the ebook, but in a more interactive way of going through it, through small bite-sized videos, and also having access to me on a weekly basis through Zoom calls, group Zoom calls, then you might be interested in the course. So it's nevertoldtolive.com /course. So there's a few things that might be interested there, but from the looks of things, that is all the questions for today. So like I say, I'll see you next week at 12 o'clock, and please do send any questions in advance, so we've got some for next week. Brilliant. Take care. Thanks.